GM. It's so good to be here. I think I come to Buenos Aires every couple of years, and I think this is the absolutely best community so far and ever before. Thanks for coming here. And I think in Argentina and across Latin America, this is where truly Ethereum and DeFi shows its benefits and really kind of like it shows how DeFi and Ethereum can be used in real life use cases and empowering a lot of people. Today we're going to talk a lot about trust and what it means to in our communities and societies and overall how we build trust and program trust in Ethereum, and thinking about also like what kind of purpose it has in credit, which I think is going to be a big part of the kind of like a next way of use cases for decentralized finance. And credit by itself isn't really a new thing. Obviously, like credit has been happening for as long as the whole civilization has been around, and it's the biggest market on earth. So, you know, the simple idea of borrowing funds or creating promises between individuals, peers, and businesses, governments, and institutions effectively is a over 300 trillion market as of today, and that's a really interesting opportunity to really revolutionize how we issue credit as of today. While credit is really empowering, and you know it's something that really helps to grow the economy, there's obviously the flip side of the credit, how broken the existing credit system is. So, as we know today, governments take more debt. There is more debt today as ever before, and it's unclear how a lot of these governments will actually manage their obligations in the future. But also there's some sort of stagnation between the increasing debt and how much the economy is empowered in the big picture. So I guess one thing about when we think about credit, what we need to understand is that there's few pillars of what makes credit, and those pillars are trust, information, risk qualification, enforcement, and capital movement. It's important to understand credit because if you want to change credit, how we create loans today in our society, these are the pillars that really put these things together. In some ways, what I think is interesting is that credit is some sort of abstraction of trust. And trust simply means, and you can also define it by asking a few questions. So, and these 4 questions are quite significant. So, who can you trust? How do you measure the risk of trust? How do you enforce obligations? And how do I move capital efficiently? So all these 4 questions are always related to any sort of credit system that we have as of today. Obviously, these questions were solved and asked hundreds of years ago. It's nothing really new. In fact, I think a lot of the primitives we have today, whether it's like stablecoins, DeFi, smart contracts, existed in the past in some form. Without obviously the benefits that Ethereum and a decentralized blockchain and that computation provides. But if you go back to Florence 1252, there's kind of a beginning of a modern credit facilities and modern base currencies. So florin is a great example of being one of the first trusted base currencies and becoming a credit system. So it's a standard gold coin, consistent weight, predictable, trusted settlement. So we started to standardize actually these base currencies that are really important for exchanging value. And it became actually also a settlement currency across Europe. We also, when you go back in time, in Venice, we had the first oracle. So they were called intelligence networks. So intelligence network is simply people, representatives that were in different places in the world and passing information further. So when banks at those old days wanted to extend credit or create insurance arrangements or some sort of ventures for ships to go abroad over the Atlantic or wherever they were going, you needed a lot of information. And you need information because you want to price your risk efficiently. And these intelligence networks were there. It might be a person in some part of the world passing information when ships are leaving the Britain to Mediterranean or somewhere else. Someone who has better visibility on, let's say, the storms coming in some part of the trade routes. And this helped to gather information and price the risk of whether credit could be extended to these merchants or similar entities. And the merchant networks became, in some ways, the first liquidity layers. And the way I think about it is that we started to see actually branches of merchants that actually started to keep double entry ledgers. So when you started to actually create promises, financial promises, at that point, we created a system where you have IOUs. And what the revolutionary aspect here was is that you could actually move value without moving these gold coins, for example. And that created a really efficient way of capitalizing any types of ventures and became a sort of a cross-border business. And something interesting that we actually found as well is the concept of Commenda. And this is in some ways like a first programmable credit system. So merchants really relied on this one type of agreement on how profit loss enforcement was defined. And when you start standardizing these types of terms, you make trade efficient. And you actually reduce the operational cost, the friction on creating these agreements at that point. So it really revolutionized the trading between merchants at that time. And now when we think about what we're doing at the moment on chain, we basically have a lot of similar concepts that we're using as primitives that live on chain at the moment. And they provide layers, programmable layers for credit. So stable coins are the base currencies. Oracles are basically providing the information. Tokenized credit markets provides the liquidity. And then smart contracts are the kind of binding force here of ensuring enforcement and also transparency. So we have the same ingredients, but in a digital, trustless stack. So the big question here is that why do we think about on-chain credit and what is the potential here? So what I think is really interesting is that DeFi is really operating in a unique 24/7 type of system where any financial opportunity can be accessed by any point of time, by any person, any part of the world. It's the most democratizing financial technology up to this date. And the most interesting part is that this technology isn't really even penetrated the most masses, and most of the people aren't able to benefit of the technology yet. And yeah, stablecoins are essentially the primitive of the base money, instant settlement, unification of liquidity. Execution layer is the smart contracts for automation, shared states, and automated outcomes. And the truth layer effectively is where we have these markets and oracles and can push the data that is available to everyone, auditable, and affect these outcomes based on what the data is. And then obviously the asset layer, so being able to create these asset markets, utilize them in decentralized finance, and also tokenize the value that exists outside of the native ecosystem. So I think with this new credit stack, what we can actually do is that we can rely on how DeFi works today with a trustless setup, automated systems, transparency, and liquidity. So one of the biggest exciting things that has been happening over the past years is that DeFi has become a sort of really efficient way of allocating liquidity into the best financial opportunities, risk-adjusted opportunities, and effectively price that liquidity accordingly on a global scale. So one of the issues obviously is that DeFi is global, accessible. You can earn on DeFi at the moment. You can borrow against native crypto assets, tokenized assets today, but something kind of like is still a problem is that when we look at the credit side of financial industry, it's very local still at the moment. So the internet evolved to become a global system accessible by anyone in terms of information, and DeFi and Ethereum does the same for financial primitives and financial opportunities, but credit is mainly the last bastion. And the reason credit is important is that to scale DeFi, we have to go beyond the native opportunities that we have in decentralized finance and being able to actually look where the efficient capital allocation system that we created in DeFi could be applied to these more traditional consumer business cases, institutional cases, in the real world without compromising and adding too many trust assumptions. So if you look at today the existing credit markets and how they work today, there you can find the common denominator, which is the local aspect of credit. So if you think about mortgages, you have local underwriting, local liquidity, or consumer loans. They're very localized, regional. You don't see much funds flowing between different nations. And obviously you have local currencies as well. It's very much paper-based. It's slow, subjective, and we know all the existing credit scoring systems really suck, and they're really, really outdated. And not most, but some of the countries, they don't even have a real credit scoring system or a credit system in overall. So what I think is the next kind of stage in when it comes to on-chain credit and DeFi is basically take what we built really well, the capital formation and the movements of liquidity into the best financial opportunity, and combining that with these more localized markets and making them more efficient. So bringing some of the concepts on chain, and also bringing a lot of that information on chain to making it easier to actually access to that global liquidity pools that exist in decentralized finance today. And I think DeFi borrowing is going to be much more cost efficient over time because of the competition and because also the efficiency and the transparency that comes from DeFi. And if you look at the credit opportunities in today's world, we see a lot of inefficiency. We still see credit card interest rates going up to almost 100% in Europe. And if you think about all the credit extension that is happening in Latin America, these interest rates are really inefficient. And when you have inefficient interest rates, inefficient financial opportunities, and credit extension, what truly happens is that it handicaps the whole economy. And who suffers the most is everyone here. So we the people, because we can't get access to credit when we need the most. And that's where basically the opportunity comes. Horizon is one example how we think about credit. One form is tokenizing credit locally, local underwriters, making the data accessible globally, having a verification system that isn't working within the closed doors. It should work openly, accessible, auditable, proof of reserves, and then being able to use that credit on the Aave protocol and being able to borrow stablecoins and push that stablecoin liquidity into real life opportunities all the way to the consumers. And I think real assets are something that's generally be a really interesting programmable collateral. So once we actually start tokenizing a lot of these real assets, from debt, from real estate, mortgages, we get into a place where we actually can start creating primitives that price the risk better, or we can tranche the risk, and we can make a very efficient system. So obviously there's certain things that we have to think about in terms of safety. So when you think about credit extension, we have to think about how do we apply DeFi into these traditional assets and traditional financial opportunities. And I believe that a lot of the ingredients are there and invented centuries ago and decades ago, but really big defining part is actually the transparency and the fact that global markets can price the liquidity better based on what kind of information and data is being given. A really great example, for example, is Polymarket. So Polymarket really helps to price data. And I think the same will apply to credit, is that liquidity by its movements can price the risk. The better data we can get, and that doesn't mean the data that we used in the old financial system, but in the new financial system. And then be able to protect that data with privacy, ZK proofs, and other new technology that is out there. So in the old world, we had all these interesting primitives that make up the credit system of today, and it really hasn't changed that much. So we went from gold coins to notes, paper, we went to digital, but we really haven't been able to solve a really system where liquidity can move to any part of the world to finance any particular financial opportunity and provide more access to credit. And I think if we put all these ingredients together and we have the best developers in the community trying to figure and solve credit, we're going to get there. We already solved DeFi, so we proved that DeFi is mature. Aave has existed over 5 years. It's been growing significantly. Whole DeFi space has been growing. Most of the issues are happening on the edges, if so. And what we now need to solve is that how do we bridge the DeFi world into these financial needs that is in the real life and every part of the world, and make economy more sustainable and improve financial opportunities for everyone. So credit is the new credit is trust, and DeFi is the new architecture for credit. And that was my talk today. And if you've been looking what we launched today, so we launched a new application. It's the Aave app. Here's a sign up for the waitlist. It's the fastest way to move funds from bank accounts into Aave and bring DeFi to the mainstream. We have also another surprise for you. I promised to drop some alpha during this talk. So we have few tickets left for Aave. If you scan this QR code really quickly, I think there's not enough for everyone, but there's few tickets there. And if you didn't get any tickets, you can always follow our Twitter or Instagram and try to snipe some Aave tickets for yourself. We're going to be also in DeFi Day on Wednesday, and Aave is on Thursday. Thank you so much, everyone.
Awesome. Stani, we have some time for some Q&A from the team, from the audience, sorry. So, okay, first question, how do I get a Aave ticket? So you already answered it before you guys asked it. It's perfect. It's the most upvoted question. Second question was, how can RWAs participate in credit market? What is missing today, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think there's two paths of bringing RWAs into, let's say like a credit into RWAs and into DeFi, because DeFi is the end game, right? And the tokenization piece, you can do the old way, or bringing old, let's say, existing credits, let's say bonds or credit ETFs, tokenize them, bring them on chain. And I think that's going to grow, and that's going to be a really big business for a lot of these asset issuers, and it's going to be a growing collateral. What I'm more interested in is in finding where there's price inefficiencies when it comes to originating credit. So finding those places where there's a very big arbitrage, high cost of interest rates, just because the old system is broken, or there's not enough data available of the markets. And then tokenizing that credit and extending that, getting the liquidity from DeFi. I think that's the most appealing outcome for tokenizing credit.
Awesome. DeFi's come a long way since you first got started in the space and pioneered it, many parts of it. What is something that someone getting into DeFi now should know or should be aware of? Is there any interesting skills that you think is good to know, good to practice? Especially for newcomers into the space?
Yeah, I think for newcomers, this DeFi is becoming more easier to access, and that's one of our missions as well, is that we want to bring more access to DeFi, and creating, let's say, an account or a wallet is a little bit different than for example, creating a bank account, because you truly own your funds, and that comes with responsibility of basically ensuring that you have security over your funds as well. And obviously, from our perspective, we're working hard to make it even easier for anyone to access DeFi without needing to, use seed words, having actual account recovery, and making it feel like a more traditional financial app experience.
Awesome. You mentioned in a recent tweet that you would shave your head if Horizon hits a certain milestone. What do you find is accelerating it? What's behind that? And maybe for people in the audience, what is Horizon?
Yeah, Horizon is a new Aave market. So typically what we've done with Aave is we've used the Aave protocol for these native crypto assets. So you can use stablecoins to borrow, lend out against Ethereum, Bitcoin, and these native assets. And now with the Horizon, you can lend out to traditional tokenized assets, money market funds, credit funds. And this market has been growing to over $500 million at the moment, even more. And if it reaches into 1 billion, I will shave my head. So that's a promise. And if it happens, before Aave, I'm going to do it in Aave. So.
Okay, let's see. Is it realistic to partner with existing credit agencies to come on chain? How do you think about like that integration stuff?
I think so. I think one thing that on-chain credit systems will help is that they will create real competition for these kind of monopolized credit rating agencies, as an example. I think the way credit is assessed, whether you can get a loan or you're eligible, is extremely, extremely outdated. And that industry needs to be disrupted completely. And I think by using on-chain liquidity as a benchmark, using the right data and pushing that with oracles, is going to really change the way we extend credit today. And it's not going to look anything like it looks today.
Thank you so much, Stani.
Thank you so much.